Hello, everyone. We are so excited you have all joined us today. I see that you're tuning in from all over the US. My name is Blair, digital and social strategist here at Waywiser. Waywiser's focus is on creating a platform and support system where an older adult can be connected to the people that care about them and provide the necessary tools for the caregivers to fulfill their roles. Today, we have Nichole Prince, master's level marriage and family therapist with over 10 years of experience working with individuals, families, and groups. She will be touching on effective coping strategies for caregivers because we all know caregiving is tough. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat feature and Nichole will answer at the end. I will now let Nichole take the stage.
Okay, here I am. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you and talk about effective coping for caregivers. As Blair said, my name is Nichole Prince. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I practice here in the state of California. I'm also a mom. I'm a caregiver and a therapist, a wife, hold many titles. So today we're talking about how to effectively cope as a caregiver. So I am the founder of Caregiver Wellness Academy. We're a digital wellness platform that provides education and resources to caregivers. So our whole goal is to talk about caregiver wellness. I'm working on finding a hobby as well. So those are all of who I am, as well as I'm working on finding a hobby. Because as we know, as caregivers, it's difficult to find a hobby. So some of the objectives of this training that we're going to do today are to learn the difference between self-care and coping strategies. We're going to learn what self-care means versus what coping strategies mean. We're also going to increase our understanding about what healthy coping is, and we're going to identify some tools for stress management. Just a disclaimer that I have to do is that I'm a therapist, but I am not your therapist. So if you feel like you're experiencing mental health emergency or crisis, this isn't the place for you. I encourage you to dial 911 or seek mental health support. I'll also stay within my COPA competence, which is mental health. So I won't expand outside of that, and I'll stay right where my expertise is, which is caregiving and mental health. Okay, so let's get into our training today. Why do we need to learn effective coping tools, right? We're first going to start off with a poll question, and we're going to ask, so I'm sharing that poll question now. Do you find that taking care of yourself is difficult? So if you can, just give me some answers. Well, they're coming in pretty rapidly. We'll give it one more minute here. Do you find that taking care of yourself is difficult? So as, I guessed, the majority is yes. So 53% of you say that it is difficult to take care of yourself. 37% say that sometimes it's difficult. And 2 answered no, which is good for you. So I'm going to follow this up with a question in the chat. If you could just tell me why. Why do you find that taking care of yourself is difficult? So maybe what obstacles or hurdles make it difficult for you to take care of yourself? And then you can go ahead and put that into the chat. Yes, time. It's always time. Right? Rory, there isn't always time. No support or time. I don't care about myself. Thank you, Sheila, for being honest about that one. Lindsay, am I being selfish? Which is not great, but that's a very interesting concept about if I take time for myself, am I being selfish, right? It can be hard to prioritize yourself, allowing yourself to include yourself in your bandwidth. These are all really great responses. No help. So what we're seeing is lack of time, lack of support, lack of prioritizing yourself, right? And understanding if you deserve to take care of yourself. It can be expensive, guilt, irrational guilt and caregiving go hand in hand. Thank you guys for your responses. These are great. I feel like I should be doing something else for someone else all the time, right? Because it's within our nature as caregivers. It's what we do. We take care of people. And so when it comes to taking care of ourselves, it is an issue. We think, we don't deserve it or we can't find time. But in actuality, if we don't take care of ourselves, everybody suffers. So this is something I myself have had to learn the hard way, that if I am not being mindful of my own needs, and I'm not talking about grand, like luxury spa vacations, that's not happening. But if I'm not mindful of just doing the basic self-care task for myself, self-maintenance task, we'll call it, for myself, then everybody's going to suffer. I'm going to experience burnout. The relationship with the person I care for is going to suffer. My relationship with my husband, my daughter, that is going to suffer as well, because I am neglecting my own needs. So the point of engaging in effective coping, taking care of yourself, we'll talk about self-maintenance, is not for me, because of course, I'm a superhero, I'm an Avenger, I don't need self-maintenance, but it's for everybody else. So the better that I take care of myself, the better everybody else benefits. When I can sleep well, everybody gets that joyful Nichole in the morning and not the often angry Nichole in the morning. And everyone benefits from that. So we're going to talk more about that down the line, but thank you for your responses. So we need to learn how to cope effectively, because caregiving is a chronically stressful condition, meaning that it's a consistent sense of feeling pressured or overwhelmed over a long period of time. So for instance, I've been looking after my grandfather for about 10 years. That is an example of a chronically stressful condition. So for 10 years, I've been experiencing the stress of caregiving. And that is why they talk about in a lot of the research how caregivers experience, difficulties with all kinds of mental health disorders as well as physical health disorders. It's because we have stress like running through our bodies all the time. So why we want to learn these tools is, like I said, we want to avoid burnout. Burnout is letting you know that the demands that you are trying to meet are too high for the way in which you're trying to meet them. And that is why we start to experience these negative consequences like irritability, anger, anxiety, denial, depression, substance use and misuse disorders, grief, reduced immune response, which isn't great right now, right? So burnout is letting us know that something in our environment needs to change. And if we're engaging in effective coping and self-maintenance tasks, then we can avoid burnout. So these are some of the things that I find that I've heard over the years that I think are dumb. When people tell me that I need self-care, I know I need self-care. When people tell me to take some time for yourself, or you just need to take better care of yourself, my favorite is you just need to learn to relax. I've had to tell my husband many of times not to tell me that, because if I could relax, I would choose to relax. If I could say like, oh, I'm not going to worry anymore, and that just happened, I would do that. I don't want to sit and worry. I don't want to sit and stress about all of my stressors or think about them all the time. So if I knew how to do this, I would do it, because, I have the ability to do it, but I don't. So that is why we're here to learn how. So I want to ask again in the chat question, how do you relax? If you do. Any thoughts? How do you relax? What are some of the things that you do? Yoga. These are great. Do a 3-mile daily walk. Wow. Listening to music is great. Walking, Sheila does not. Rain and storm sounds. Taking a long drive, taking a hot bath. I haven't. Warm showers and working out at night. These are really great. Go for a walk or talk on the phone with friends. So these are some great suggestions that if you're having a hard time, this is a great list of things that you can do. I read or listen to my Audible, watching a movie that makes you laugh. These are all really great. So what I'm coming to understand is that a lot of you have really good tools that you do reach for. And I'm sure you might have some that aren't so good or unhealthy that you might reach for as well. But some of the things that I'm seeing is that you think that the time or the support to be able to do the things that you like to do makes it difficult. So I love, Deborah, that you said going to the beach. The beach is a great example of a really healthy way of relaxation and coping. But sometimes the beach isn't as accessible as we need it to be. Like, I love also going for a walk on the beach. However, trying to coordinate leaving my house alone is like a grand feat, right? I've got a 4-year-old, there's a 96-year-old. So trying to even get out of the home without experiencing guilt, without, experiencing the ability to organize or orchestrate leaving the home, it can be difficult. So although going to the beach is effective, it might not be as accessible as I need it to be. So we're here to learn things that you can do in the moment that are accessible, that are easy to do, to be able to promote a sense of stress relief. So what I very much dislike about the term self-care is that it's ambiguous and it can be confusing. Even relaxation sometimes can be confusing. But in our society, everybody's throwing out the word self-care these days. They're saying like, oh, self-care. But we don't actually know what that means. And for caregivers, it can mean many different things. So because caregiving is a chronically stressful condition, the idea of engaging in, like this lady here is reading a book in a bath, that looks amazing. I would say that qualifies as self-care, but that is not always accessible for your life. So I see here that a couple of folks, you have family members with dementia that you're taking care of. And so depending on the severity of the dementia, taking a bath may or may not be a realistic option. As your caregiving goes on, usually the person that is receiving your care, they progressively need more time. So something like sitting in a bath and reading a book, I can't even imagine taking a shower without my 4-year-old, bursting into the bathroom, may not be as inaccessible as an option as it once was in the past. So we need to identify that what we're actually talking about is self-maintenance. We're not talking about just self-care, we're talking about maintenance tasks. I have worked with several caregivers that when we're thinking about self-care, we're actually talking about self-maintenance. And these are just basic things that people need to do for themselves. So it's a set of behaviors that we routinely use to take care of ourselves. And it's important that we understand routinely use to take care of ourselves. It's not something we use here and there. It's something we routinely do. And that is achieved by utilizing effective coping tools. And they are tools used to consciously or unconsciously reduce stress. So coping tools do not treat burnout. I want to let you know that. If you're already at a place of burnout, doing things like deep breathing is not going to change your burnout. Burnout means that something in your environment generally has to change. So I see a few people here in the chat that you are caregiving without support, meaning that you don't trust or have anybody in your immediate circle that you trust to take care of the person that you care for. So when we're looking at these coping tools, if you're already at a place of burnout, and people who have no support while caregiving have a likely chance of suffering from burnout, the deep breathing isn't going to change that. You're probably going to need something like professional help, counseling perhaps, depending on your symptoms, to help you to treat burnout. So I want to make it very clear that if you're at a place of burnout or you're approaching that place, doing these coping tools will help reduce stress, but they're not going to treat the ultimate problem, which means that your environment or how you're operating probably needs to change. What they're going to do is they're going to help you figure out how to move forward. They're going to give you a pause. Everybody needs to take a pause in a moment to figure out what the best response is going to be and explore what it is that you need in the moment. So the tools that we're going to go through and talk about today are going to help you to pause to identify what is going to be your next important step of self-maintenance. So we're going to look at, are these tools that I'm using good? Are they effective? When I use them, do they give me the intended result? And then am I able to then identify a task that I need to do next in order to achieve stress reduction? So let's talk about what that looks like, because I just confused myself. I was talking. What is effective coping? So I want you to think about your effective coping tools, all the tools that you use in your arsenal, in your tool bag. We're going to talk about what makes a coping tool healthy versus unhealthy. So here we have a few examples. Something like smoking, shopping, doing yoga, journaling. These are on a varying scale of what society might say is healthy and unhealthy. But for you, you've got to determine what you find is healthy and what is unhealthy. It's going to be up to you to identify, is this tool actually working for me, or is this something that I need to ditch and find something else? So, is it effective at reducing stress without producing additional stress is the question. So when you're looking at your coping tools, you want to identify, is it effective at reducing stress without additional stress? So will it result in impairment? Will it add to your pile of stress? And does it produce the intended effect? And we're going to take a poll question to identify, let's see, if you feel like the majority of your tools are healthy or unhealthy. So would you say that the majority of your coping tools fall into the healthy realm or the unhealthy realm? Beautiful. Okay, so I love it. A lot of our answers are falling into the healthy realm as opposed to unhealthy, which is great. That's where we want to be. So when you're looking at your coping tools and you're deciding, are they healthy or unhealthy? Again, we're seeing, is this activity going to result in impairment? Will it add to my pile of stress, or does it produce the intended effect of relaxation? So let's take a look a bit at the example of like alcohol use. If it, and that can be debatable depending on your situation. But alcohol can be one of those tricky coping tools that if you're having a glass of wine at the end of the night, let's say, does it create impairment? So if there's an emergency, are you able to like get up and respond to that emergency effectively if you're using alcohol as your coping tool? Does it add to your pile of stress? Maybe, maybe not. And does it produce the intended effect? Alcohol does promote relaxation, right? We know that using alcohol, it's a depressant and it promotes your body to physically relax. So it does produce the intended effect of stress reduction, but it's debatable whether that activity results in impairment or adds into your stress. So something like yoga, which we'll talk about, and we call it progressive muscle relaxation because it's just a lengthier term. Something like yoga doesn't exactly produce the same effect as alcohol, but it does promote stress reduction, meaning like stretching your body and your bones helps to move that tension throughout your body. It doesn't tend to add to your pile of stress, and it often doesn't result in impairment. So you can see the difference, that whether what works for you is going to be up to you to decide, but we want to look at, is this actually effective? So it's going to be up to you to take a look inside your toolbox and assess, what do I do that's really effective and what do I do that's not so effective? When we're looking at what's inside your toolbox and assessing, you want to make sure, like I said, it follows those 3 rules. Will this activity result in impairment? Will it add to your pile of stress? And does it produce the intended effect? You might have several tools that you use, which is great. It's even better if you have several different types. So I saw in the chat that, a couple of you take walks every day. But if you can't walk that day, perhaps you do something different like yoga, or you talk on the phone with a friend, which is amazing, right? So if you don't have just one coping tool, increasing, the amount of coping tools that you have in your toolbox is really important. I do want to pause a moment and address something that I did see in the chat in terms of guilt, and just kind of normalize the fact that irrational guilt is really common in caregivers. And what irrational guilt is saying is that your needs and your wants fall in the lower totem pole compared to everybody else. So this idea of, am I selfish, is what I saw for engaging in some self-care activity. Am I selfish for going out with friends? Am I selfish for taking this walk or going to the beach? or getting your nails done or getting your hair cut? Am I selfish for engaging in these activities? And when we look at what's rational versus irrational, it's like, no, you're not selfish. That is not what selfishness means. That taking care of yourself just a bit, like a sliver of what you take care of others or how you take care of others, is not being selfish. Yes, I can definitely talk about how effective support groups are because I love group work, and we're going to talk about individual, group, and family therapy come towards the end of our presentation because it's incredibly effective. So, and we'll speak a bit to that now. What support groups can do is to normalize the fact that what you're experiencing in terms of your rational guilt, is normal. But the key is that you do these things anyway. So you might feel guilty about going out with friends or getting your hair done, but you should go out anyways and feel the guilt, but also get your hair cut. So I'm not saying that you're going to not feel guilty in doing some of these things, but remember that guilt is irrational. And if you're providing 97% of your time to other people, you can reserve 3% for yourself. It's not even fair. We're not even talking about 50-50. We're talking about just a sliver of your energy and your ability to focus on you. An example of that is like eating. I've worked with several caregivers, myself included, that don't eat throughout the day, that what their lunch is might just be slivers of other people's leftovers. So pizza crust or sandwich crusts or, half-eaten. Mine would be a half-eaten grilled cheese that my child didn't touch. I am lactose intolerant. I shouldn't be eating cheese. But because I don't believe I should sit and make myself an actual lunch, I am eating something that is not going to be nice to me later. And that comes from irrational guilt. So instead, I need to make a better choice, right? Which is sitting and making myself a lunch that I know is going to give me energy, is going to make me feel good, and actually sitting and eating that lunch. So that's an example of like, I'm going to feel guilty doing it, but I'm going to do it anyways, because I know it's important that I nourish myself so that I have enough energy to do all of my chores and tasks. Okay, let's move forward. So you're going to replace the ineffective coping tools with effective ones because you can't discontinue the use of one coping tool without replacing it with another. It won't work. So if we're using the same example of like having a glass of wine at the end of the night, you can't just say, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm just not going to do it because your body is probably used to it. Your brain is used to it. It's rewarding, right? It gives you all those good rewarding feelings. So you can't just take that away because your brain and your body will freak out. It will say absolutely not. You have to replace it with something else. So if you choose that you don't want to use alcohol anymore as a way to cope, then you need to replace it with something as effective. So that might be taking a walk at night. That might be instead of sitting and having a glass of alcohol, you call a friend and you guys watch a show together. It might be deep breathing. It might be putting on 15 minutes of a yoga or meditation app to use. So if you're looking at your tools and you're saying, I don't want to use this anymore, you can't just cease using it. You can't stop. People, if you're a smoker, you understand that. If you drink, you probably understand that. Mine was cookies for a long time. If I feel stressed, I'll instantly go for sweets. And I can't just say, I'm not buying cookies anymore. There's no more cookies in this house. And I did that. And what I learned is like, I'm an excellent baker. So cookies don't require actually a lot of ingredients to put together. So I didn't buy them, but what I ended up doing was making them. So they're accessible to me all the time. So that's something that we have to take a look at. If you don't want to use something, it's not an option just to say no. You have to replace it with something just as effective. So instead of cookies, I chose to do step class, and that's been working for a little bit now. When you find your new tool, you find it, you want to use it consistently, even when you're not experiencing stress. You want to make sure it's easy. You want to make sure it's accessible. And you want to make sure, what is my last one here? It's realistic. So like taking a bath is wonderful. I would love to be able to take a bath nightly, but it's not always accessible and that's not always realistic to my life. I'm sorry, that's my dog. And so we want to take a look at using these tools consistently, you want to make sure it's within your reach, it's accessible, and that it's realistic. I apologize. She's going to bark. So let's get into the actual tools. We've talked a lot about, why you need to cope effectively and the point, but let's actually talk about some of the tools. But before we move into that, I want to ask, are there any questions? Because this chat feature is really easy, so I can look. So any questions? Yes, Doc Snuggles are my coping tools too when she's not being loud and mean. Any questions that I can answer about what we've talked about so far? And I will definitely talk about support groups and therapy. Okay, so if there are any, I can see them right there. Let's talk about mindfulness-based tools for stress reduction. Why we use mindfulness-based tools is because they're accessible, they're easy, they don't require any heavy lifting or equipment. Mindfulness-based tools mean here and now. We're going to use what we have in the moment to be able to reduce our stress. So it's all in the here, it's now, it's accessible. So the first one that we're going to talk about is deep breathing. And I know, when I tell clients about deep breathing, they think it's hokum, like they think that, you're just telling me to breathe, but there's actual science behind deep breathing. That is why it's something that we encourage so much in therapy, and I myself have to use, that your body has a natural stress response. And in caregiving, that can be activated in a second. There have been moments I went to just tell my grandpa good night, we're wrapping up for the night, and then I ended up in the emergency room like 15, 20 minutes later because something was wrong. And in caregiving, as all of you who are caregivers, that emergencies happen in the blink of an eye, right? That things that you weren't anticipating, you were anticipating just winding down for the night, you actually have to kick into gear and into action and do. And so your stress response is being activated at all times. You're not anticipating it. So deep breathing helps with that because it promotes the relaxation response in your body. So there's a stress response and there's a relaxation response. Rapid breathing, as I was doing earlier in this presentation, due to stress and feeling nerves, right? Rapid breathing can induce stress. So let's use myself as an example. In the beginning of this presentation, I was a little bit anxious. So I noticed that I'm holding my breath in my neck. So a lot of you, if you've experienced anxiety or if anxiety is a part of your stress response, you'll notice that you're holding your breath in your neck. So a lot of your speech is pressured. It might come out faster than you anticipate. It might come out breathlessly. It's because you're not actually breathing into your whole body. As this presentation has gone on, because it's been about 30 minutes, naturally my body is acclimating to the anxiety. I'm feeling a bit more comfortable. So I can feel that I'm getting breath deeper into my body. And that's our goal. In the moment when you're experiencing a stressor, you want to try to get air down deep into your gut, your stomach, your abdomen, so that you're circulating it throughout your body. And that then it will kick in your relaxation response. So don't think of deep breathing as just, blah. It is actually an effective scientific coping strategy that will physically help your body to relax. So if you're feeling in the moment very stressed, it's just simple, like 5 seconds in, 7 seconds out, putting your hand on your stomach and feeling the breath in your stomach, right? That's the whole goal. Feeling the breath in the stomach. So I'm going to do it now. So that I can get through the rest of this presentation, right? I can feel the breath in my stomach. So that is your goal. Our next tool is something just as simple. It's just checking in with yourself. So when you can do something like deep breathing, you're triggered to stress, your child has smeared kinetic sand all over the floor, or grandpa needs to go to the hospital, you take a moment to breathe so you understand what is the next step. During your day, I highly encourage you to start using a body scan, and that's asking yourself questions. So I know that there are many of you in here that are caregivers, and you probably have logs and pages of things like bowel movements for the person that you care for, what their lunch was, their medication. You're logging all this information for them. You're noticing everything about them when they look good, the color of their skin when they look dehydrated, whether they're eaten that day, what they've eaten, the quantity. You know all of this information about the people that you care for, but you don't know any of this information about yourself. So you don't know if you've eaten recently. You don't know that in the morning you wake up feeling tired. I did not know that there are people out there who don't wake up and feel exhausted in the morning. I didn't think that was a reality, but apparently that's a real thing, that people wake up and they feel rested. So I didn't know that. And I wouldn't know that if I didn't ask myself this question: how do I sleep? How do I feel when I wake up in the morning? Have I eaten? Am I able to focus? Am I not able to focus because I haven't eaten? Am I dehydrated? When's the last time I had a cup of water? And if you take that a layer down, do I find my work fulfilling if you're also working and caregiving? Am I achieving some of my personal goals? Like one of mine is to find a hobby because I feel like I need more balance. All of these things come from actually asking yourself questions. It is amazing that we don't do this. It's crazy because, like I said, I can tell you when my grandpa last ate, what his bowel movement looked like, what the color of his urine is like, when his eyes are droopy, if he's pale, how much water he drinks a day. But if I'm not mindful, I don't know any of those things for myself. And so we actually have to force ourselves to take a moment, stop and ask ourselves these questions and check in. I like to use the mindfulness bell app, right? Making your mom drinking more water, but forgetting it for yourself. The water is right there. And you're probably like, oh, I'm thirsty. But it's like, let me go get mom more water. Something else I noticed is that when you have to use the bathroom, this is how I know if we're not taking care of ourselves. If you have to use the bathroom, let's say you have to go pee, and you don't do it, you push it off. That is a telltale sign that you're neglecting your own needs. So one of the things I just tell people to do is, like, when you have to go to the bathroom, go the first time you experience the sensation. But many caregivers are like, no, I'll wait. So denying yourself just those basic needs is crazy. So I use the Mindfulness Bell app because it's a simple app. It's a chime, and all it does is, like, you go and you identify the times in which you want to check in with yourself. So it could be hourly or it could be 3 times a day, and it'll have a nice bell. And then that is where I stop and kind of check in on my needs. So I'll do it 3 times a day because every day is too much. But the chime will go off, and then I'll ask myself, like, have I had my water today? Did I eat? Did I actually eat a meal is the question. Or am I eating snacks? What did I eat? How am I feeling? Am I very tired? Am I over caffeinated, which is a big one for me? Did I have more coffee than I should have? So I'll use this app as a moment, a reminder to sit and check in with myself. And if you don't want to get the app, you don't have to. You can set a simple reminder on your phone, an alarm on your phone to go off several times a day to tell yourself to check in with yourself so that you're not neglecting these parts of yourself. So a body scan is something that if you're going to pick any of these, I would highly suggest that you pick this one because it will inform you about your next move. If you're irritable because you're hangry, then it will inform you that you need to go and sit and have something to eat before you tackle your next task. If you hear that bell, you check in with yourself, and you're like, I have to use the bathroom. It'll remind you and inform you that you need to go and handle that, like ASAP. So our next tool is eating mindfully. This, we're talking about just incorporating these tools into our day. Eating mindfully can be a really effective measure as well. Like my example, there are many caregivers I know are not eating well. And I'm not even talking about what they're eating. I'm talking about the fact that they're not eating, or they're eating once a day, or they come to the end of the night and they realize like they've had nothing, or they don't have meals that are substantial enough to fit all of the things that you do during the day, all the tasks that you have to complete. So eating mindfully just means eating with awareness. Not the awareness of what foods are on the plate, but whether the awareness of the experience of eating food. Eating is an enjoyable thing. It's being present moment by moment for each sensation. So it's looking at your plate and actually sitting and enjoying it. A lot of you are making these wonderful meals for other people, right? There was a time when I remember making my husband's lunch and it would be beautiful. And then I would take like a cup of noodle to work. And I remember in that moment sitting and I'm like, why? Like, he's got a beautiful lunch. You know, my daughter too, I'm chopping up cherry tomatoes and we've got side of carrots. We've got a nice full sandwich. And I have a cup of noodle. I have like the microwavable noodles. And so I think, like, why is that the case? Do I not deserve, cherry tomatoes and carrot sticks? I do. And it wouldn't take me but an additional moment to chop up more for myself. But that's how low we prioritize ourselves sometimes. And so we have to get out of that way of thinking that we are also a priority. You deserve cherry tomatoes and carrots. Are practicing mindful eating. We're taking a moment to look at what we're eating and we're enjoying it. So we're sitting, ideally, and we're taking the 10 minutes it might take to eat breakfast, and enjoy your breakfast or enjoy your lunch. 10 minutes, maybe 7 for some of you, to just sit and actually engage with your meal. Enjoy the sensations of chewing and swallowing and feeling it in your body. Enjoy the sensations of just the different flavors that you have in your mouth. And you don't even have to practice this with a meal. You can do it with a hard candy or gum or mint. Just taking the moment to actually enjoy the experience of having a piece of candy and taking a few minutes just to slowly eat it, as opposed to it being another task that you have to get off your plate. So when we're thinking about coping tools that we can just incorporate in our day that are accessible, this is another great one, just to sit and actually eat your meal. Because you deserve to sit and eat a meal, not standing up. There's a time I was eating pancakes. I was just using my hand. And as I was flipping them, I'm tearing pieces off for myself. There's no way to enjoy breakfast. Progressive? Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's no way to enjoy breakfast, Lindsay. Sit down with the rest of the family and eat your pancakes, right? You made those. And I make really great pancakes. I should be able to sit with syrup and my sides and actually slowly eat my pancakes and have my cup of coffee, because I can give myself 7 minutes. So when we think about, back at the beginning, guilt, you can give yourself 7 minutes to eat. That's not taking away from anything. The whole day is meant for other people, but you can give yourself 7 minutes. Progressive muscle relaxation is just a fancy word for stretching. It's performing progressive muscle, it's performing exercises at least a couple times a day. You can do them while seated. So if you're working and you're at a desk, you can do progressive muscle relaxation exercises while you're in a seated position. And it's basically just stretching your body, and I will give you the downloadables of some of these coping exercises. And so it's going to take you through steps for progressive muscle relaxation. And what it does is it's about 5 minutes. And all it does is it takes you through a guided, meditation of going down the line and stretching each part of your body. So if you're a typer and you type a lot, it's going through it and stretching your wrists, just stretching your wrists out just a little bit, rotating them, rotating your neck, rotating your ankles, identifying the sensations that are happening in your body as you do this, stretching out your legs. And all of this, like I said, can be done at your seat. So if you're, sitting, you're sitting with the person you care for and you're using that time to visit, going through and progressively relaxing your muscles is something that you can do in a few moments. You can just start with relaxing your jaw. Sometimes you feel very tense in the moment, and you can just start by identifying the fact that, like, your face is tight. And so you can go about just relaxing your jaw. And that is helpful for promoting stress reduction as well as anxiety reduction. So we're not talking about, skills that take a lot. We're talking about basic things that you can do for yourself in the moment during very hectic days that just give you time to be able to identify what's happening with you so that you can go on and get that drink of water or have something to eat because you're hungry and you just didn't register it in your body. Okay. Are there any questions about these 4 coping tools, these mindfulness-based coping tools that we've talked about? Listening to a webinar can be very relaxing and good for you to learn because, you know what, I'm a therapist, but I go to therapy to be reminded of these things. And we'll talk about therapy and seeking professional help in just like 1 second. But there are moments, my therapist's name is Frank, he had to remind me, like, hey, why aren't you sleeping? And I had to actually take a look at that. I'm not sure. So we had to work towards that. So, a lot of what I'm saying isn't maybe new information for you. And some of it might be, but sometimes it takes a reminder to let you know that how we're treating ourselves, we could do better. And so I know these things. I tell people these things all the time, but even I need somebody to check my behavior and tell me, like, you're deteriorating again. Like you need to start engaging back into your coping tools. And I'll go, okay, and then I'll start. So any questions about the tools that we've gone through? Yes, even a therapist needs another therapist. We actually should have. This is very true. Any questions about what I've gone over so far? Okay. So this is where I want to talk about getting support. And for some of you who caregive in isolation, meaning like you don't have a lot of support, take some of this with a grain of salt if you need to, except for the part about seeking professional help. But Weighwiser, which I'm so glad I was able to collaborate with them on this this presentation, because I think what they provide is really necessary. So a point about that is, for a while I was caregiving, it was just me and my husband, mostly me, and I didn't have a lot of family support because they lived very far. So I would remind one family member that did live close by, like, hey, Papa's got a doctor's appointment on this day, and give them a lot of advance notice. It's like 3 months out. They've got a doctor's appointment this day, and then come to the day and they forgot. And so then I'm calling off of work or having to figure out how to get him to that appointment because we've been waiting 3 months for it because they dropped the ball. So what I love about Weighwiser is that they provide a means for communication and collaboration, that you don't want to have to add an additional chore on your list of reminding somebody else what they need to do for you. That is really annoying, to have to constantly remind people what they promised they would do, because then we go to that immediate instinct of, I'll just do it myself. If I have to keep reminding them, it's just easier for me to do it myself. And you don't want to have to keep doing it yourself if you don't have to. So if you have support, incorporate them into what it is that you're doing. And Weighwiser provides an app to make that easy. So you can post their updates, their events, their medical appointments, because, as a care receiver's needs progress, they have a lot of appointments. You can also track activities of daily living, which is beautiful, so that everybody's on the same page about what's happening. And so use support like Weighwiser. I highly encourage you to use it to be able to collaborate with your support system to provide better support for the person that you care for, as well as for yourself. With that means delegating, and that's difficult for some people to do. So if you're experiencing guilt, if you're experiencing, I saw somebody say that they don't trust many people to take care of, their loved one. And that is credible. But if you do have people that you can trust and lean on, delegate. So sometimes, family members will come by and they'll say, oh, if I can do anything, let me know. And I will say, like, yes, you can. You want to help me with that laundry over there? Or can you go to the store and pick up these items? Can you do this? Can you take Papa to his appointment here? Can you make these phone calls for me? I have learned over the years that if somebody's offering, even if they're not serious about it, I'm going to take them up on their offer. So I'm going to learn to delegate some of these responsibilities onto other family members, and it's their grandpa too. They should also be doing some of these tasks. I'm going to learn to ask for help. And that has come from my experience, my personal experience of burnout, that I need to rely on other people to be able to help me, because sometimes you can't do it all alone. You can't do it by yourself. It might be an impossible task. So that took me going to therapy to understand that I need to communicate better and delegate, that I don't need to experience guilt for asking for help or hiring help, because grandpa really didn't like that. I don't need to experience guilt for asking for help. So, individual therapy, family therapy is very good for helping families get on the same page about care, and group therapy. So there was a question about group therapy, and what group therapy can do is that it can help you to normalize and validate some of your experiences. There are things like anticipatory grief and irrational guilt that you might feel, but you don't have a name to, like you don't know what it is, and group therapy can help to normalize your experience. Sometimes caregivers have negative things to say, negative experiences, um, things that family members don't want to hear about. And the benefits of group therapy is that you're sitting with a peer who probably gets what it is that you're saying. When you're angry, is another emotion that caregivers have a hard time working through. Group therapy can help support your anger, because maybe other family members don't want to hear about your anger, or they diminish or disregard or minimize your feelings. Your peer in group therapy can help with that. It feels like you are connecting with others that speak your own language. Exactly. Because you don't have to add, like, oh, when you're angry, with the person that you care for, you're experiencing sadness. A lot of the response people experience or say, is like, oh, don't feel that way, or you don't need to feel angry, or you don't need to feel guilty. But it's like, but I do feel these things. Um, like, don't tell me I don't need to feel these things. I do feel these things. So it can be very hard to communicate with somebody when they're telling you that your feelings aren't valid. And group therapy tells you that everything that you experience is pretty valid and pretty normal. So you feel okay, you feel normal having your emotional experience. Individual therapy and family therapy work in the same kind of way, but family therapy can help you just learn to communicate better. That if there's a person within your family dynamic that really needs, they have a lot of care needs, family therapy can be useful in getting everybody on the same page. So, a family session that I've done recently is between adult siblings and their aging mother who has Alzheimer's. So, it's about not having that one person who has chosen to be caregiver, um, teaching her how she can better communicate with her brothers about their mother's care. And that was the bulk of our family session. It's how can we learn to communicate more effectively for mom. That was the bulk of what our work together was, and it's instrumental. And then individual therapy, like for myself, just helped me to acknowledge that I was experiencing burnout, that things did need to change, that I was experiencing irrational guilt, and I didn't feel very supported. So I learned how to communicate more assertively to my family, because I am younger and they're all very older, like they're a lot older. And so me having to communicate with them felt very difficult. But individual therapy helped me to do that. So I have a friend that understands because she is going through it as well. Yes, having somebody who understands you, just one person, is great. It's really all you need. So it's been 50 minutes. I can't believe it. So let's answer some questions if you have them. I feel like everyone and anyone that does caregiving should look at the mental health benefits and get an appointment. It's just as important. It's not more than keeping your annual doctor's visits. Your friends will try and help, but they can't or aren't equipped. That is so true. I saw you, Blair. You're going to help me. I didn't realize how easy these questions or looking at the chat would be. But that is so true. I know some caregivers that don't go to the doctors. They can't prioritize it. So sometimes, fitting in therapy can be difficult, but therapy is more accessible now than it ever has been. Virtually, most therapists are still online, and that won't change. So I've had, people do therapy in their car, in their bathroom, in a closet, um, outside, walking, wherever they need to do it, because it's so accessible. You don't have to find someone to watch your child and the person you care for, and you can do it within the safety of your home without having to orchestrate everything you need to do to leave. So if you're thinking about it, it is a great time to get into some therapy. So how do you avoid negativity in groups, especially online groups? Sometimes people are looking for validation for negative feelings, and that adds to your own stress and can spiral. I don't exactly like unmoderated caregiving forums. There are ones like Reddit or on Facebook, but they're not exactly always supervised by a mental health professional or even a trained peer. So I think that if you're seeking some kind of connection, it should be in a more structured format. So Facebook is great for community, but if you're like, you can be triggered by negativity of other people in caregiver support groups, and you don't need to be triggered any more than necessary. So I would say that you should join groups that are moderated by a professional or that are under the umbrella of a professional organization, instead of Reddit or Facebook. Those are my two go-tos, because it is mostly people who are experiencing caregiving or in crisis coming to dump their emotional experience, and that's not healthy for them. It's also not exactly healthy for you to experience all the time. Like, you're not going on Facebook anticipating to be triggered to stress or to fear. Like, you're just going on there hoping like get some good good time, but here you are being triggered. So I guess the answer to your question is to avoid them and find something a bit more structured. Yeah. Yes. How to set boundaries. I feel it's more codependency. She knows I will take a weekday away and start getting sickly by Thursday. Yes. So setting boundaries is important. And my quick answer is to do it anyway. So if you know this is a pattern, perhaps it's with your mom that she does, you know what's coming. You know to expect there to be sickness or something happening on Thursday. And if there's somebody who you use to help with her during the weekday and you trust them and they know what they're doing, go anyway. Do the thing that you were anticipating doing on anyway, even if you feel guilty, and you might feel guilty. That's fine. You can go and have moments to yourself and experience guilt at the same time. So the boundary comes with the action that you might explain to her how much you need this time. You might emphasize that you really need this time. And she might not care. Not that she doesn't care about you, but she wants you around because you're comforting. And that's great. However, it's not healthy for you or for her. So take the time that you need, experience the guilt about it. And the more that you do it, the less the guilt will be as intense. So the more that you acclimate to setting that boundary, I'm sorry, mom, but this is my day. I'm going to go and, have a Cynthia day. The more that you do that, she will become accustomed to the anxiety and you'll be accustomed to the guilt, and you just keep doing it. So I tell people all the time, just step into the feeling, step into the guilt, take your Cynthia day, and have a good day, because she'll be there when you're waiting, or she'll be waiting for you. Good. Okay. Just do it. Exactly. So my state doesn't recognize the spouse as a caregiver. Is there an online resource that can guide my efforts in urging state reps to revise the law? I actually don't know about that. I don't know what state you're in, and I don't, every state has different caregiving laws, and it's tricky. So that, I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. Maybe there might be somebody else who might have a solution to that, but that I can't answer that one. I'm sorry. Any other questions? I really hope that this was helpful. I know that these techniques are simple, but sometimes it's the simple things that we don't do and we neglect. If you're going to walk away with anything from this training, I want you to walk away with this idea that you are not, you're never going to feel equally as important as the other members of your household, because as a caregiver, it's your nature to give. It's just what you do. But you need to reserve a sliver just for yourself. 2%, 3%, 5% for yourself. You can give yourself a sliver of your efforts. It's not going to be 50-50, but you certainly can do 10% of your energy and your time devoted to your maintenance. Because think of it like a car. When your car breaks down, the whole day is ruined. People can't get what they need if you break down. If you suffer from burnout, everybody suffers. If you are down a day because you're sick, everybody is down, right? And the whole train will probably stop. Nobody's getting to school, nobody's getting meals, nobody's getting lunches because you have a hard time taking care of yourself. It's not selfish, it's self preservation. So take that and use some of these skills to preserve yourself. So I'm grateful. I thank you guys.
Nichole, this was so great. I don't know about you guys, but I was on the other side of the camera doing some of these tools that you taught us. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone else has any last minute questions. I'm going to push some links out here to you guys. Here's a link to Nichole's website to stay connected with Nichole and anything else that she has to offer. We all can see from this presentation. This was so useful. You have so much to offer, and I'm so grateful for taking the time to do this today, Nichole. And then also I'm going to also push a link out to kind of join our Way Wiser family. There's many different resources that we offer. So we would love for you all to be a part of our family as well. If there's
Way Wiser has a Facebook group, right?
Correct. Yes. And if you click on this link, it will have ways to join the Way Wiser platform and then also a link for the Facebook group. So we would love for you all to join that as well. There's a lot of great people within that group and everyone leans on each other and we send resources out through there as well. So
I just want to say that that's a great example of what we talk about, like a better group that is moderated by mental health professionals, because Way Wiser has a team of mental health professionals. So if you're going to join a community, I would suggest it be something like Way Wiser on Facebook to utilize.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nichole. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to round it out?
No, I'm just so grateful and I thank you for this time and opportunity. I had a really good time. And so thank you all for your participation and just hanging on with me while I, go through my presentation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was a great chat. Just watching everyone engage throughout the time was really great. Also, there will be a follow-up email that will include the video of this whole entire webinar, so you can all reference it. If you ever need a little reminder, like Nichole said, many times we all need it, no matter how many times someone says it, a reminder is needed sometimes. So I hope everyone has a great Thursday. Thank you so much, Nichole, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you.